never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with John Kandra of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay. Now, John, can you start us off with some background on yourself?
Myself, I was born in 1925. That was before the Depression. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in the Depression years.
And where were you?
In Beaverdale, Pennsylvania. It's a small town outside of Johnstown. Okay. It's a small coal mining town.
Okay. And what did your father do for a living?
He worked at the mines. He was like an electrician in the mines. And he'd done most of his work there. And he also done some work at the church that we belonged to, because we lived right behind the church.
Okay.
So he helped to wire the church when they were building it.
Okay. Now, was he able to keep his job in the 30s?
Yeah, off and on, because at that time, you know, when they needed coal, they hired the coal miners to get in and start digging the coal and then sending it out on the railroad cars.
But then there were periods when they didn't have orders, and and so the men got laid off. And
the men were laid off. Yeah, that was all through that time.
Okay. And how many kids were in your family?
There was 8 of us, but the 2 girls were already grown up, and they already went to Pittsburgh, to my grandma's place in Pittsburgh, and the others lived in the house.
Okay. So you still had 6 kids in the house there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we had 2 brothers and 4 girls.
Okay. Now, how much schooling did you have?
How much schooling?
Yeah.
Well, we had. I went to. We didn't go to kindergarten because there wasn't kindergarten.
Right.
Went from 1st grade on up to high school.
Okay.
Up to the high school till I went in the service.
Right.
Because in the service, when the war broke out, they told everybody that when it's your birthday, you sign up, you go to the draft board and you sign up. Well, my birthday was on February, so 15th, so I went to the sign up. And no sooner after I signed up, March the 29th, I was in the service. And I didn't even graduate. And so when we came back, then they gave us our diploma.
Oh, good of them. All right. So now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor? Yes. We were at the church at the time. We used to help at the church to fire the furnace, you know, because they had a coal furnace and that. We'd done that, me and my brother, and we always worked around the church and stuff. So we were there down in the furnace room, and we had a radio there, and we heard it, that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, you know, and so that's where we heard it.
Okay. Now, before that, had you been paying much attention to what was going on in the world, the war in Europe?
Yeah, kind of war in Europe. We used to get the magazines, Look magazine and the paper. We'd look at that.
Yeah. And did you think that sooner or later we might be getting into this?
Yeah, sure. And my mom said, "Boy, it's going to be where all my boys are going to go in." You know,
now,
and we did.
Yeah. Was your brother older than you or younger?
Well, yeah, I was the youngest boy, and then it was Frank, 2 years older than me, then there was Joe, 2 years older than Frank.
Okay. Now, did your brothers go ahead and enlist after Pearl Harbor, or did they get drafted, or what?
No, they got drafted. Okay. Frank got drafted right away, and he signed up, and he was drafted right away, and he went into the Air Force, and my brother Joe, he went into the Navy. And he stayed in the Navy till the end.
Right. Okay. Now you're a little younger, so you're too young to be drafted in '42, but they catch up with you in '43.
Yeah.
Now, aside from not being able to finish school, I don't know, what was your reaction to getting the draft notice?
Well, everybody was talking about going into the service, and that's what I was happy to be drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, take me through the sequence. You go, you report. Where did you report to first when you got the draft notice?
Fort Meade, Maryland.
Okay.
That's where I went in.
And how did you get down there?
Well, we took a bus down there. Yeah.
So they bussed men from your area
Oh, yeah.
together? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Fort Meade, where in Maryland is that?
That's just outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would you describe that base? What was it like then?
Well, when we went there, we saw the barracks. You know, the barracks that they had there. They had a lot of barracks there, and we looked at them, and then that's what we're going to be living in for the rest of our life. You know.
Yeah. Now, were these permanent buildings or?
They were permanent. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And how long did you stay at Fort Meade?
I think we stayed there probably maybe 3 weeks at the most.
Okay. Now, were you just processing there, or were they going to be
They
training?
were processing. You know, they checked you out. You had to tell you what you're good at, or you know, trying to get your what you're like. I was good at electronics, for instance. Well, that's why they put me in the radio section when I in England.
Right.
So, but then after that, they transferred you on a train going down to Mississippi, Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi, and that was really hot for us northern kids, you know.
Right. Now, had you ever taken a long train trip before?
No.
Okay.
No, that was the longest.
So what was that like? That trip down there?
Oh, that was a couple. That took a couple of days to get down there. Yeah, that was tiresome too.
And could you get off the train now and then?
They would stop at some of the towns like Louisville probably and stuff, and we'd get off and walk around a little bit, and then we'd get back on because they wouldn't stop the train too long.
Right. Now, when you were going down, would they just stop the train in different places on the tracks to let other trains go by or anything like that?
Oh yeah, because sometimes there's only one track, and then there's a little offshoot that go in there, and then the other train would go by, and then we'd pull out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it takes a long time to get on down there. Now, where in Mississippi is Camp Van Dorn?
Camp Van Dorn is about, I would say it's 40 miles south of Natchez.
Okay.
And then it's almost down to the border of...
With Louisiana?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
okay.
because New Orleans is right there. So we went to New Orleans a couple of times on our, you know, we had the furloughs, and so
Right.
we'd go down there.
All right. Now, what was going on at Camp Van Dorn, or why had they sent you there?
Well, there, Camp Van Dorn was used for a engineer battalion. That's where they taught the kids how to build bridges, how to pick up mines, and just about anything that had to do with road construction and bridge construction.
Now, were they organizing a whole group of engineer battalions, or just one? Or?
Yeah, well, this was one battalion was there, and we had A, B, and C companies, and each company had a captain of each company and lieutenant and whatnot.
All right. Now, which battalion was this that you were training with?
Well, this was the 163rd Engineer Combat Battalion,
Right.
and I was in Company B.
Okay. Now, when you first got there, what kind of training did they start you out with?
Well, they got you up in the morning and took you out at calisthenics at 6 o'clock in the morning, calisthenics for probably a half hour, a quarter of an hour, and then after that, you took a shower, had breakfast. After breakfast, you cleaned up, and then they started taking you out to different places for training.
Okay. Now, was your initial training kind of standard Army basic training, or were they already training you to be an engineer?
No, a basic training
Okay.
first. They showed you the rifle that you had and how to take it apart and whatnot.
And how much emphasis did they put on discipline, following orders?
Oh yeah, you had to follow orders, because otherwise, if you didn't follow orders, you could get KP duty. That's kitchen police duty. You know, that was their
All right.
determined.
Okay. Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to life in the Army?
No, it wasn't too hard for me. No, because I was, like I say, we in our family we was all together, and we had 6 kids, and it was easy. But kids from one family, only one kid in a family, it's pretty hard, you know.
So you knew something about getting along with other people and working with them and
Yeah,
not always getting your own way.
that's right.
Yeah, I guess
That's right. Yeah,
All right. Now,
because every barracks had a corporal of the platoon, and he was in charge of the barracks, and you had to make your bed and stuff. And sometimes they come and check the beds if they're made right. If they're not, that pull the things off, and you tell the guy, you got to make your bed now.
all right. Now, did you get KP duty sometimes?
Oh yeah, I got KP duty. Yeah, it was demanded that at certain times you got KP duty, whether you know, even though you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But if you did something wrong, you got KP duty on top of that.
Okay. All right. Now, how long did this sort of basic training phase last?
It was 13 weeks,
Okay.
basic training.
And then what did they do with you after they completed that?
Well, after that, we were being trained picking up mines, going out in the field, picking up mines, and starting to work on bridges, how bridges are built and stuff. And that's what they would do every afternoon. They would take us out in the field and train us what has to be done.
All right. And how close did the training come to the work you actually did when you got to Europe? Were
Well,
you doing the same things?
Yeah, it's just about the same training, yeah. But when I went to Europe, then I was sent to Oxford University in England to start learning the Morse code. And that took 3 weeks to learn that.
Okay. So, but at the point when you're back there in Mississippi or whatever, you're not yet
No.
training to be a radio operator.
No,
You're
I
just
was
one of the guys.
I was one of the guys, yeah. And we had marches every week. They'd march either 5 miles. Out of the month, there'd be 4 marches in a month. 5 miles in 1 week, and maybe to bring it up to 10, and then the last week it would be 25 marches. And that was tough because it was hot at that time, you know. And the kids would drop down, and they have a jeep coming by at the end, picking up the guys that dropped, you know.
Yeah. Now, were you in pretty good shape in that time?
Oh yeah, I was in good shape. Yeah.
You could do that. Now, did they send you off on sort of larger maneuvers or take you on longer field trips?
No, the only no, they didn't send us to long maneuvers or anything on.
Not during training, but after the basic training was
After
over.
the basic training, yeah. Yeah, we went on a field trip with a couple other companies there, Company C, A. We'd go all in one and go on a field trip. Yeah.
And do you remember where they took you, or did you go where you went on maneuvers?
They went almost up to Natchez. I think it was Natchez where they went to. Yeah.
Okay. Did they take you over into Louisiana swamps and that kind of thing? Or?
No.
Okay.
No.
You didn't do those.
No.
All right. Now, how long were you based at Camp Van Dorn, do you think?
I think we were based there till we left for Europe.
Okay. So a little over a year then.
Yeah.
Because you get to Europe in you get to France in June.
Yeah.
And how long did you spend in England before you were in France?
Oh, we were there about, I think it was about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we kind of, so back up again, back at Camp Van Dorn. What did you do when you were off duty?
Off duty, well, they had a theater there. We'd go to the theater once in a while. Because Camp Van Dorn was out of, in no man's land, you know. There was no town or nothing there. So we went to the theater, and then they also had passes that give you you can go to Natchez or go down to Louisiana.
Yeah, because you
New
go to
Orleans.
Baton Rouge. Did you go
Baton
there?
Rouge, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, did you do much of that? Did you go off base?
Yeah, I went off base maybe not often, but I did go off base. If there was, they only gave so many passes. See, and so if you didn't have a pass, you stayed there. So I got a number of passes, so we'd go with the friends.
All right. And how did the people down in that area treat the soldiers who came in?
Oh, they liked the soldiers. Yeah, they loved the soldiers. Especially when they had down in town, like in Baton Rouge, at Christmas time, they'd have parties and stuff, and soldiers would go down there and go to the parties and stuff. So they treated them good.
Okay. Now, the South at that time was still segregated. I mean, did you notice that at all while you were there?
No,
Just-
we didn't know that at all.
Okay. So at least where you were, what you were seeing, it
Yeah.
didn't really register with you at that time.
Yeah, because we were in no man's
Right.
land, you know.
Right. Okay. Now, did you get any chance to go back home before they shipped you overseas?
I think they did. They sent us home once on the train. You go home and for I think it was a week or what it was. I don't remember how long it was, but that was it. At one time, they sent us home.
Okay.
We kept the train and caught the train and come home.
All right. Okay. Now, let's see. The battalion you were in, when you got down to the camp, was there already a cadre there for it? Were there already some
Yeah.
officers and non-coms?
Yeah, there was
Okay.
non-coms there, and Captain Jacob was there, and they were getting some more in too. The non-coms were coming
Right.
in.
And then, where were most of the soldiers from?
Soldiers were from all over. They were all over. I can't believe it. What came from California, and there's mostly from up north, and from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Maryland.
Okay.
It's all around there is that where they came from.
Okay, so just had groups of guys who were organized and then sent in from different
and
places.
from Michigan too, because Harold Johnson was from Muskegon, and he was our company clerk.
Okay. All right. Now, when was it that they shipped you overseas?
That was, I think that started in near.
Let's see. Well,
I think that was latter part of 43.
okay. Let's see. You've written up an account here, so we'll
Yeah,
just
I
kinda
got an
check it.
account there
Okay.
written
It
up
says
there.
February 17th, 44, left Camp Van Dorn by train. So it's
Yeah.
February of 44 then.
February of 44. That was almost a year later
Right.
of our induction into the service.
Okay.
Because I went in March
Right,
29th.
Okay. Now, where did they ship you out from?
That was New York, Camp Shanks.
All right. And what kind of boat did they put you on?
It was on a cruise ship, it was Cristobal, and that was from South America, Venezuela. And we were on that, and that was a nice boat. But all the guys that got on that boat, and it was rough seas when we started, and they were just throwing up, because they couldn't take it. And
Sure.
so, but when that boat landed in England, in Wales, it went back to pick up more soldiers. But on the way back, it got torpedoed. So that was the end of that boat.
Okay. Now, when you were on that boat, did you travel in a convoy or by yourself?
When on the boat,
Yeah, was your boat in a convoy?
oh yeah,
Okay.
it's all the big convoy. They finally met out there, and they had big destroyers out there too, because they went with all the different ships there.
Right.
To go out there, and they were controlling, and they were worried about submarines.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why they had the destroyers out there.
Right. Now, as far as you know, did your convoy have any trouble with submarines, or?
That I don't think they did. But when they got near England, then the airplanes started coming across and checking for any
Right.
activity of submarines.
Right. Yeah, because by then they were pretty good at
Yeah.
defending against U-boats most of the time.
Yeah.
All right. But obviously not for that boat on the way back.
No, and they did sink a lot of boats on the way back because they were just going back by themselves. They weren't
Okay.
going in the convoys.
All right.
And that's how they got them.
Okay. Now you said you landed then in Wales,
Wales.
and then what did they do with you after you landed?
Okay, then we went from there to a town of Northampton, isn't it? Did I have in there?
Let's see. You landed at Swansea. You go through Birmingham, Chipping Norton.
Chippy Norton. Yeah.
Fine name. Yeah.
And they put us up there. We stayed in the tents there, and we were not too far from Stratford on the Avon. And we'd go down there too at Stratford on the Avon and on the weekends, and we saw shows down there and stuff. And it was a nice place to go on a weekend.
All right. Now, what was the battalion doing while they were there? Were you still training or just
Oh yeah,
sitting around?
they were still training. Yeah, in fact, near the end of our stay there, they were brought bridges in to teach them how to build the bridges and stuff, and pick up mines and stuff, and they were still training.
All right. And then while you were there, at what point was it that they sent you to radio school?
Oh, that was as soon as I got there. I think probably maybe a month or two after I got there, they had to select guys to go to a radio school to learn the code, because there's some of them who can't learn the code because they could be there 2 weeks and they can't get it. So.
All right. Now describe a little bit how what you had to learn, or how you.
Well, you had to learn the dot and dashes, and they had a keyboard there, a key that you press, and like a tape recorder also up there, and they'd give you a note there of what to type out after you learn the code. You know, you have to learn all the 26 characters of the code, and how to keep your wrist high and just tap, you know, diddy dum dum diddy diddy diddy, you know, and then when you're done that, you have to go to 30 words a minute. After that, then they would start transmitting to you. You had earphones on, and they would transmit to you in code, and you had to write it down in what was being transmitted.
Okay.
And they would start you off with maybe 10 words a minute, and then they gradually get up. After a couple of weeks, after a week or so, you'd be up to about 30, and you have to do that. And if you could do it, then you're okay. You're in.
Okay. Now, what proportion of the guys you were training with were able to do it? Did most of the guys pass?
Well, there was, I think, yeah, most of the guys passed that was with my group. Yeah, most of them passed, yeah. One guy was from Johnstown, another guy was from Baltimore, and I was from Beaverdale, and then there was one from Blairsville, Bob Zundell. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess they had given you those aptitude tests they gave you when you first were getting processed.
Yeah.
Part of us figured who might be able to do this well,
Yeah.
and maybe they guessed right.
Yeah, they got it right. So they picked the right guys.
Okay. Now, what kind of radio equipment would you actually work with?
Oh, we had a big, it's like a console, and it had all the dials and frequencies that you have to dial out, because the frequency would change every week or every day or whatever it was, and then the code would change. You had a different code for the thing, and you had the codes every day. You had a thing on the side where the codes was a book, what code you use for the sending of the messages, and yeah, and there was this unit was in the back of a command car. A command car is like a big Jeep. Really, it's got in a back. It's like it's a four door, but the back was bigger so that the command radio could sit there, and we would be in that command car. Like when we were over at night, we would stay. You had to be at the radio all night, so we had 4 hours on and so many hours off, and you'd stay at that radio. And listening to the codes going on.
All right. Now, how long was that training course?
How long was the training course?
Yeah, for the radio.
Oh, that was, I would say, the training course after we got our codes. Then we went. The training course only took about maybe 2 weeks at the most.
So you had about 3 weeks of learning the code, and then a couple more for.
A couple of weeks to run how to run the radio and stuff.
Okay. And you said you were doing this at Oxford University.
Yeah.
So where did they put you up?
Well, we were at the Oxford. They had tents there because there was other guys from other places coming there too. So they had tents. We stayed in tents at the Oxford University.
All right.
I can say I went to Oxford.
There you go. Yeah. In fact, you graduated from school.
I graduated
at Oxford.
from Oxford.
There you go. Did you get to see anything of the place or do anything in off hours, or was it just studying and eating and sleeping?
Yeah, because you had to. I think we were at that code thing almost 8 hours a day, if I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then after you finish that, you go back to your unit,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
Well, after we got back to the unit, then they gave us radios and to put into the trucks of the each platoon had trucks, and we had to mount the radio in there, the receiver, that we could transmit code to it, and we done that, and then we mounted the console into the command car, so that we had that ready. So we had done a lot of work of mounting these radios.
Okay. Now, were the radios in the trucks, were those smaller than the one in the command
Yeah,
car?
they were just about maybe that high and about that wide, that thick.
Yeah.
And that's all they would do is receive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they couldn't talk to you or send you messages. They could just hear the orders. Or
Yeah, they could hear the orders. Yeah.
Okay.
So the captain would send an order to Company B, platoon, first platoon, to get over to the so and so, and he would just that would be a voice message.
Right. Okay. And if the platoons had to report back, how did they do that?
Well, if the platoon had to report back, they would have to no, I don't know how they done it. They had a runner that would come. They would just go ahead and do what the message said.
Okay.
You know, if they said that we need a truck over here at the so and so, and the guy would take off with the, and then they would already be there.
All right. Okay. Now, how long was it, do you think, between when you where were you when D-Day happened?
D-Day happened. We were still by Stratford-on-Avon.
Okay.
And we were waiting. It was in that thing there, and we thought we were going to go D plus 10 or so right after the D-Day. It happened June the 6th.
Yeah.
But we didn't get on till June 27th.
Yeah.
Because there was so many people, different groups going, and you had to get on the boat. Well, it was all lined up. All the roads were clogged, and to get on the boat but they assigned you. So that was why we took so long to get over there.
Now, when your turn came up, was there a point where they told you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't talk to anybody, and
no, your turn came up. You were lined up in a big convoy, and you'd be driving there, and then you would get on the boat. When you get to the landing, get on that boat and put you on one LST. The whole battalion, whole company.
probably a whole company, yeah.
Yeah, on the LST, and that would go across.
Now, once you got on the LST, did you have to stay on it a long time, or did they unload you right away?
No, they once you got on, then you'd wait, and they'd take off, and as soon as they took off, you were over to the other side within, I don't know, half hour, an hour.
Well, let's see. Depends on where you sailed out of, probably.
Yeah.
Do you know which port you left from?
I haven't moved.
Southampton, maybe?
Southampton, yeah.
Okay. Probably took a little longer than half an hour in an LST.
Yeah, time to get on there, but when we were on there, you had to get all your pack, your rifle, everything all set, and a backpack was on you, and you had to get that all set, and all the stuff you had to carry.
Right.
And then when it come up to shore, the guy with the running the boat, he didn't pull up too far because he was afraid that the thing is going to get stuck on the sand. So he would just pull up there so far, and then he dropped the front down, and then off you'd go. Well, gee, when you get off the boat, you go down to water this thick, and your rifle is here, and you're up to here with water. You're trudging through that water to get on the shore.
Okay. Now, were the vehicles on that boat too?
Yeah, there was vehicles there.
Okay.
They had some vehicles on that.
And were they able to drive those off and have them get out of the water?
Yeah, they had them. They had some vehicles that run in water.
Okay.
Yeah, amphibians they were
All right.
called. Yeah.
Okay, so they were prepared to unload into the water first, and then get ashore from there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, which beach did you land on?
Utah Beach.
Okay. And so this is June 27th. Land on Utah Beach. What did they do with your unit after you landed?
Well, we had to get together and we had to climb a hill, a sandy hill, all the way up to the top, and that was hard walking on sand and with the backpack and rifle and trying to get up that hill to the top. And then finally we get up to the top, and then they all got together, and then we took off for a small town. There's a little small town there.
Let's see here. So you went through Isigny and Carentan.
Yeah.
So those are towns in Normandy and so forth. And this is in late June. The Americans are still kind of bogged down in the hedgerow country.
Oh yeah, there
in
was
those
hedgerows there, all hedgerows, and they were bogged down there.
And as you were moving through Normandy here and kind of heading up toward where you were going, what evidence could you see of the war?
Oh, you see a lot of. It was like when we got off on the beach, you had big holes in the thing where the guns actually when they were shelling that beach before, and you could see all the holes and all the damage that was done. Boy, a tremendous amount of damage was done there.
And what did the towns look like that you went through?
Well, the towns, they were, some towns were not too bad because the bombers didn't hit those towns. The only towns that were hit were a little bit bigger towns. They had bombers would hit that. And then another thing too, when we landed, we saw a lot of the gliders that they had. The Air Force pulled the glider, and then they would let them off, and the guys in the glider would get out and start. They're like paratroopers almost, and they would get out. But the trouble is, at that time, they let the gliders out when the weather was bad, and and it was dark, and so they let the gliders go, and the gliders had to glide, and they didn't even see where they were going. And some of them landed in the trees, because we had a couple of them, we saw a couple of them in the trees, the gliders in the trees, and the guys got in the trees, they had to get out of there and out of the glider.
Yeah. We
A
lost
lot of mistakes they made.
Yeah. Okay, but so there's still pieces of glider and stuff in different places and so forth. All right. Now, do you remember kind of where they sent you first, or what was the first actual job you had to do once you were in Normandy?
Oh, it was it was near St. Lo that they had to check on the roads, see that the mines are cleared and stuff, and if there's any road damage, they had to make sure that we can repair that road and get that. And that was at St. Lo.
Okay.
And then from there we got connected with Patton. He because engineers, they always pick on the engineers to come here. You guys got to go with me, or you guys got to go. So we had to go with Patton.
Right.
And what happened that one day, Patton was driving. We had our Corporal Anderson. He was standing on a corner as like a guard, and of course he had a couple of schnapps, before then. And then here comes Patton down the road, and he didn't. Corporal Anderson didn't even salute him. So Patton drove so far that he backed up, and Patton told Anderson, "Do you know who I am?" And Corporal Anderson said, "Well, do you know who I am?" Corporal Anderson. And the next day, the captain got an order from Patton to demote that guy from corporal, where I think he was sergeant or corporal. They would demote him because he didn't salute him. So we all laughed about it. So then after a month or so, he got his
rank
back again. He gave us a good laugh.
All right. Now, so when you first got to France, did you kind of stay in one place for a few weeks? Because it took a while to clear out St.
Yeah, we stayed there
Lo.
like it's near St.
Near
Lo.
St. Lo,
We stayed there probably a week, 2 weeks.
Now, were you there when they did a massive carpet bombing attack over St. Lo, where they sent a huge number of heavy bombers over?
Yeah.
And they all did you hear that or see any of that?
Oh yeah, we saw a lot of that, and the planes going over. In fact, when we were at one thing there, it says that when we were at one of the places, our guy shot down 5 Messerschmitts with a 50 caliber gun, and yeah, it was a picture of him in there.
Yeah, you got infantry training. Yeah, it says outfit. Well, you mentioned that there was. Actually, you've got a note in here that says there was a downed ME-109, and the report was the pilot.
The pilot was a girl.
Okay. Of course, that's not something you saw yourself. That
No,
was
I
just
didn't
what
see
they were
that
saying
myself. No.
About it at that particular time.
Yeah.
All right. Now, as you were working at St. Lo and then moving out after that, did you get much harassment from the Germans? Did German aircraft come over you?
Oh yeah. This was after St. Lo, one small town. We were we were going on like a convoy. Well, me and Manley was the other driver of the Jeep, and I was in front, and there was the command car was in the back. So I told Manley, I said, if you see a plane, I said, we got to stop and get out, and because they want to hit the first car, and then they're going to hit the back car, so they stop the convoy.
Right.
So here comes a plane, and sure enough, I dive out of the car, and Manley dives too, and we left. And then this one guy with the gun, he shot that plane down, and it's a picture of him who he was. I have a picture of him there. It's
let's see.
Right here. I think it's right here.
Oh, that's
this guy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Private Walter Clark.
Yeah.
Okay, shot down 4 ME-109s. So was this a 50 caliber that was mounted on the back of your Jeep? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on the back of a Jeep, and he had that, and he shot him. He got 4 of them.
Yeah, well, that's what the gun was for.
Yeah, that's what the gun was for. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See, now, did you also come under German artillery fire early on? Or?
Yeah. Artillery used to hit probably 40, 50 yards away. And I remember that one time that we were in the command car and taking messages, and we sent out a message to the battalion headquarters, said, hey, we're getting artillery fire here. And then the message comes back, anything else new? Because they were getting it too. Yeah, so we just stayed there. It's lucky that we didn't get hit.
Right. Okay. Now, once the breakout happens at St. Lo, then Patton starts moving, and so you're just kind of rolling along with him.
Yeah, we had to go with Patton because he wanted that bridge across the Seine River when he got to Paris. He wanted that bridge in a bad way. So as soon as we got there, boy, we got the engineers, the A&C company got together and started putting that bridge across the Seine River. That was 900 feet long.
Could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of your first big construction project?
That was the first big bridge we built across the Seine.
Now, on the way over to the Seine, did you have to do a lot of mine clearing or bridge repair?
They had to, if they stopped the convoy and they thought there was mines there, they would call the engineers to get up there with their mine detectors and probe and see if any mines in the road. And there's a couple of times that they did have mines in the road.
Now, were there times when the engineers wound up going ahead of everybody else?
Well, the only one time I can think of was that we were ahead of somebody else, and then we had to hurry up and get back, because we were at the Battle of the Bulge. And at the Battle of the Bulge, we were ahead, way ahead there. And then Germans were starting to throw the artillery and stuff. And we had to get out of that town in a hurry, so we had to move back because we was too fast going there.
Yeah. Well, the Bulge was kind of exceptional because we were throwing in anybody we had, and they had engineer battalions, and they sent a bunch of them in.
Yeah.
But I guess you were...
The Battle of the Bulge, the reason it happened because they knew that the Americans are going to be celebrating Christmas, and that happened around Christmas time, and they got in there and they start moving all their troops out into the Battle of the Bulge, and thing is, we didn't have any air cover because it was all foggy, and it was foggy for a whole week, and they were getting pinned down because they didn't have any supplies, they didn't have nothing. So they finally when they it cleared a little bit, they finally come there and landed
Okay.
all the supplies.
All right. That's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves
Yeah.
in the story here. So let's going to go back. You're driving across France. You do a little bit of mine clearing here and there,
Yeah.
and then you get up to the Seine River. And
Yeah.
that's. Do you know about how long it took your battalion to build that bridge?
I think it's in there. It's one day.
Okay. So
Yeah,
they're
it's
getting
in the back.
Yeah. First combat bridge across the Seine, 600 feet, 7 hours.
7 hours. Yeah.
All being shelled.
Yeah.
And
And that was because they had Company A and Company C. Both of them were working on that bridge.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, after you crossed the Seine, did you just keep rolling forward through France, or did you get to go to Paris next?
No. We went to. We stopped there, and they gave us time off to go to Paris and look around. And so we went to the Arc of Triumph and Notre Dame, and saw all the different sites
Yeah.
there. And Notre Dame was really something to see.
Mhm.
And then Arc of Triumph was really nice.
Okay, and that.
But we only were there one day.
Right. All right. And then basically after that, do you follow Patton going east?
Yeah,
Toward
we followed
Lorraine?
Patton on the way going east and following the map where they went. He went down, and then we had where we built the next bridge was further down in almost in Germany, where we built the next bridge.
Okay. And then once you kind of get into that area of northeastern France and then Germany, you're building a lot of bridges.
Well, yeah, we
right?
built 40 bridges. The battalion built 40 bridges. Our Company B built 19 bridges. So they were working, I tell you.
All right. And were there different kinds of bridges
Yeah,
that you were
different
building?
kind of bridges. Some were pontoon bridges where they put the pontoons in the water, and then they put the track on the pontoon, and they would go that way. And then some were Bailey bridges made out of steel, and they would with the shorter spans and stuff. They would use the Bailey bridge and stuff. So there was different kind of bridges that they used, and some was a timber bridge too. So.
Okay, so you had all kinds of different
Oh,
ones.
yeah.
Now, as you were kind of operating in France, how much did you see of the civilian population there?
Oh yeah, we saw a lot of civilians. In fact, when we went to a town, a lot of times we'd sleep in the barn where they had places like a straw and the
Right.
cows and stuff, and people would be next door. The French would be next door, and they would come and give us eggs and stuff, you know. And one thing about France, the small towns, they always had manure pile outside of the house. And the bigger the manure pile, the richer the person is in the house because he had a big farm.
Right.
Yeah, and these manure piles are all the way down in these little towns. So that was, and we stayed at a lot of the barns a lot of times just to not put up a tent.
Okay. But at the same time, but you weren't normally going into the houses and just taking those over.
No.
Okay.
No, we just go in there and like in a barn, we'd
Right.
stay in a barn and stuff, where it was nice and warm and stuff.
Okay. Now, did any of the French sort of try to do business with you, trade stuff or swap stuff, or did they just keep to themselves?
No, they would. A lot of the French would come out, like I say, they would bring us eggs and stuff, and they would treat us like normal people. You know, we weren't conquerors
Right.
of any kind.
Okay, so you were on their side.
We were on their side. Yeah.
Did you give them anything,
Oh,
cigarettes or other stuff?
We'd give them stuff that they were short of or something like that. We'd give them stuff they were short of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's see. Did you men in your unit manage to get hold of French wine? I mean,
Oh
was that-
yeah, yeah. We got cognac and stuff, and the cognac was the white liquor. One of the truck drivers in our company. They put the cognac in that can that they have water for the big can, the water
Right.
can, and so they put the cognac in there, and then he had to fill out the next day or so. He had to fill his truck up because his water was down. So he grabbed the wrong can and he put that cognac into the into the radiator.
Oh.
And then the guys come, "Hey, where's the cognac?" And then he started thinking, I put it in the radiator.
So what happened to the radiator?
I don't know what happened to that radiator.
All right.
That was, yeah, they were bawling him out and everything because they saved that, they wanted to save that cognac for later on.
Okay. Now, as you were kind of moving along with Patton and getting into northeastern France, did you know very much about what was happening in the larger campaign or how things were going?
Yeah, because we would get the Stars and Stripes. That would you could read it in the Stars and Stripes, and a lot of times, even on the radio, you could hear it and hear what's going on.
Okay, so you're kind of aware of how things were going on. Because
Yeah.
Patton, part of his army, they were doing a lot of heavy fighting around Metz and some of those places.
Yeah, Metz, Munich.
Well, Munich comes later, but I mean,
Yeah.
in the kind of the fall of '44,
Yeah.
they're kind of stuck in that corner of France for a while.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
a lot of hard fighting. But basically, in that area, you're just building bridge after bridge.
Yeah, we're building or fixing roads.
Right.
Because there's one there story about the Paroy Forest that we were in. The road was so muddy from the rain that they couldn't get vehicles through it. So we had to go in there and cut the trees about that big and lay them across the mud, and then they would come with gravel and put it on top of that. That would be our road that they would build. Now that was a good way to do it.
Now, is that what they called a corduroy road?
Yeah, corduroy. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, corduroy road. Yeah,
Okay. So that goes on, and then Battle of the Bulge starts in the middle of December,
yeah,
and pretty quickly Patton gets called on to come and help
yeah,
attack up from the south.
yeah.
Now, did your battalion get involved in that? Were you following him north?
We would follow him in only so far. We didn't get into the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
It was right near the edge of the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
Yeah.
And were you just rebuilding bridges there, or
We were
mine clearing?
rebuilding bridges and going into these forests. The roads that went into the forest, there was a lot of times mines there. So they would send the guys and pick up those mines. Well, in there I have written where Captain D'Amico, he was on the Jeep going into this road, and he stepped off and he hit a mine, and it blew his finger off, and he was a piano player, but he blew his fingers off, you know, and that's hard. If you got a finger blown off, you're not going to play the piano too good. He was so mad because his fingers were off, and his leg got hurt. And yeah, and so that's what we've done. Most of the time we would go into these forests, because a lot of the roads went through the forest, and that's where they would always plant the mines, because it's easier to do it in the forest.
Yeah, and they knew you had to go on the road.
You
there.
had to go on the road, you couldn't go off, so they had a, yeah, they were smart that way.
Now, was it on one of those sorts of jobs that you got too far ahead and ran into the Germans?
Yeah, they ran into the, and then we had to pull back. Yeah.
Now, at a certain point, your unit switches. You get transferred from the Third Army, and
We went to the Third Army, yeah.
Well, you were with the Third Army. That's Patton. But then you
Seventh
leave,
Army
and
was
then-
Patton.
No, Patton's Third.
Third and Seventh Army.
Seventh
we
Army is in
transferred.
Alsace. That's down there too.
Yeah, we went with the Seventh Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then eventually, okay. So you didn't go up to the Ninth Army farther north. You were
No.
you just stayed with the Seventh. Okay.
We went with the Seventh or with Patton.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, at what point do you kind of really get into Germany?
At what point? It was about, I think, near Munich,
Okay. Well, that's
or what's before.
well, you have to cross the Rhine somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? All right.
Well, it's the map.
Okay. January 12th says you crossed into Company B crossed into Germany. Okay. You need to clip your mic back on, or just hang on. You're upside down. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. To squeeze the clip.
Huh.
See that part? Yeah. Flip. Yeah. That part goes up.
This part goes up.
Up, and then you squeeze that to open the clip on
Oh.
the bottom of it.
Oh, I see. Let's go here.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So because January 12th says you crossed into Germany, kind of go through the Maginot and Siegfried lines. You're kind of going through the old fortifications
Yeah.
at that point. And then going on from there. All right.
And we went down through Nancy, France, I
Mhm.
think. That's where we went to.
Okay, yeah, because then you're with the 7th Army, and you're in Alsace. Okay, and then it looks, I guess, from the way your account runs, then at this point are you still rebuilding bridges? Now, did you build a bridge on the Rhine, or?
I think so. I think it's
Okay.
on the map, in the map.
Yeah.
The map shows the bridges, and it shows all the
Right.
numbers, the number bridge BR,
Mm-hmm.
and it just goes long. That's all the bridges that we
Okay,
built.
yeah. You're at Worth there. All right. But you built at Mannheim, probably, or that area. Bridge number 6, Bridge 26 at Worms. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're kind of going with them. Now, as you were kind of moving through Western Germany and so forth, was there still a lot of fighting going on nearby?
No, not as much. No, as we went into Germany, there was
Mhm.
not as much fighting going on. There was a lot of. We ran into a lot of prisoners that were coming back,
Yeah.
giving up.
Right. Now, did you get to see any of them? Get a good look at them?
Yeah,
What did they look like to you?
they were young kids, like young. They were like 20, 25 at the most.
Okay. Well, were some of them teenagers, do you think?
I
Or
think
younger
so.
than that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
'Cause they were using a lot of boys and older men by then, too.
Yeah, because they lost a lot of older men, so they're using the boys then.
Yeah. All right. And did you see much of the German civilians as you get into Germany?
Yeah, we got into. We saw the civilians, like when Munich. They would be walking on the streets and stuff, and they would talk to you and stuff. They weren't afraid of you anymore,
Mhm.
because they knew that we were there to cause peace.
Mhm. Yeah, and the war.
And
yeah.
the war, and the war. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, where were you when the Germans surrendered? How far had you gotten?
We were. Where were we?
Had you made it to Austria by then?
It
or-
was we were near Austria,
Mhm.
yeah, because I know I have a picture of the guy holding up stars and stripes and says "War is over."
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we were. I think and I remember Nancy, France.
Mhm.
We went there, and the only place we could go is into a big factory where they made the cloth.
Mhm.
And all these big old rollers.
Mhm.
So we slept on the floor in there, and all you could see for maybe 200 yards of just where they made all that cloth.
Mhm.
I can remember that to this day.
All right. You kind of now once the Germans surrendered, then did your unit settle down in one place and
Yeah,
stay for a while?
once they surrendered, we went to Salzburg, Austria,
Okay.
and that's where we ended up in Salzburg, and then we went into the apartments. There was apartments there, and they gave us those apartments in Salzburg, and we stayed there for 5 or 6 months till December.
Right.
And we went down to Salzburg all the time, and boy, that was a beautiful place because they had a big swimming pool down there, and we'd go down swimming, and then you'd look up, you see the snow-capped mountains in the summer on the Salzburg, and that's where they made the Sound of Music.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you have much actual work to do?
No, we didn't have too much work to do then because I was playing horseshoe all the time. Oh yeah, I used to cut hair. Me and James Lett, he was a barber, and we were, and he said, "Come on, John, we're gonna show you how to cut hair." So I started cutting hair with the hand clippers, and so we'd cut the company's hair, cut the company, the lieutenant, the captain. I cut his hair too. So that's how I learned how to cut hair.
Okay. And with the war being over and all, were the Austrians pretty friendly to you?
Oh yeah, they were real friendly. Yeah, we'd go down into Salzburg, and they used to have like festivals down there, right on the thing, and they were real friendly. They'd have dances there. I still remember those dances. The guys used to wear leather shorts, and then they would hit on the leggers. That's the first time I seen that. Yeah, and they'd drink beer all the time.
Now,
And then we used to go, they used to take our company down there in Mozart Square, and we would march in Mozart Square for a festival or something like that. And that was interesting to see.
yeah. Now, had that area taken much bomb damage, or was it
No.
in good shape?
No, that area was in pretty good shape. Salzburg was in good shape. And then a couple times, we went, took us up to Berchtesgaden from Salzburg up to see Hitler's home up
Yeah.
there. And that was something to see, yeah.
And what sort of condition was that in?
Well, that was hit a couple times, and you could see it that it was damaged some. But and then from there we'd go down through Linz, Austria. We'd go into Linz, and that's where we had to do some work in Linz. They had to do, so that's how we went to Linz, Austria, and that was nice to see. That was a nice town.
Now, were you doing bridge repair or
Bridge repair and road repair there too,
Right.
because some of the bombing took place there, knocked out some of the bridges.
Yeah, because that was a more important part of the transportation network. I mean,
Yeah,
Salzburg's
more
kind of up in the mountains and
yeah,
away from
yeah,
that, but Linz is
yeah.
important. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And now, did you get any kind of furlough or leave time? Could you go travel around at all, or did you just stay with your battalion?
Yeah, we just stayed with the battalion. Yeah, yeah.
Had there been any talk in kind of May and June of sending you to the Pacific?
Well, they were talking about it, but they said that they wouldn't send us because they'd have to send all this a lot of equipment and everything with us, so they wouldn't send us over
Okay.
there unless they really needed more, because they had battalions over there.
Right, right. So you were pretty low on the list. And
Yeah,
then,
we were low on the list.
And then
yeah.
the war ended, so it
Yeah.
wasn't your problem anymore.
Then when we war ended and then we were shipping back, we had to go into a railroad car called 4x8. That's when they years ago used to have 40 soldiers and 8 mules.
Yeah.
That's what they called it,
Yeah,
4x8.
these are boxcars.
Boxcars, yeah.
All right. And so that's how you got from did you ride in those from Austria all the way to the
All the
English
way
Channel?
to where we had embarked to go to home.
Okay. Now, do you remember how long that train trip took?
That took I think it took a couple of days.
Yeah.
Because it was on a train and the trains would stop and stuff.
Yeah. And this is December now, right?
Yeah.
Or late November, December.
Yeah,
in there?
December.
Yeah.
It was like December 14th.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I got out at December 31st of 1945.
So was it a cold trip?
Oh yeah, it was cold. Yeah, we got on a boat then and we landed in New York. And it was Christmas time there. You can see all the lights. All the lights were lit, and the cars were going, and everybody was happy. And then finally they shipped us right down to Fort Meade. That's where we got discharged.
Okay, you got kind of signed back out again.
Yeah.
All right. And so when did you actually get back home?
Well, my folks were living already in Baltimore
Oh,
then.
okay.
They
Okay.
moved to Baltimore, so I got
They're right
home
there.
right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then after you got back, what did you do?
Well, after I got back, I went to, I decided to go to school. I wanted to go to television engineering. So me and my brother wanted to go too, so he went with me. We went to Chicago, American Television Institute. So we went there. He went for 2 years, and I went for 3 to get my degree in television engineering. And that's where I met my wife, there at the Aragon Ballroom. We got married in Chicago, and we moved out to Grand Rapids. And that started a family out here.
Okay. And then who did you work for out here?
Out here, I worked for WLAV, a
radio.
TV station that was on 92nd Street.
Okay.
Yeah, and they had a TV station.
Okay.
That's all they had. They only had a microwave out of Stevensville over into Chicago, WBKB, and we transmitted all microwave signals. And the best stuff that we put on was Wednesday night wrestling. Oh, that was popular for a long time. You know, Wednesday night wrestling would come on. But the station was only open like from about maybe 10 or 11 in the morning till about 10 at night, I think. It wasn't, they didn't have any cameras or anything. Only thing they had was projector, iconoscope projector, and then they run film. So that's it. So I was working down there for, and then I was working with, for Grand Rapids Television. They were selling TVs, and we were working and repairing TVs and stuff. And then we went on our own after that. 3 of us got together and we set up Advanced TV on our own for 36 years. We were in business.
Okay, so this
we've done a lot of. We were the first ones to put cable into these big apartments, Hillmont apartments. We put cable in there with the Gerald company, and then we got into this, like when you get, what do you call it, security.
Okay, security systems.
Yeah,
and things
security
like that.
systems we put in
Setting and
for
kept
the stores.
cameras and
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And it would go down to the police station. We had it so that when it ring off, it'd go to the police station. So we set up. We had interstate security, we call it.
All right.
So we were that. Then we finally retired.
All right. So you were keeping up with the technology for a good long time.
Oh yeah,
now.
yeah.
All right. When you look back at the time that you spent in the service, how do you think that affected you, or what do you think you learned from it?
Oh, I learned a lot. That I think, you know, if it wasn't for the service, a lot of the kids would never have gone to where they're at today. Because after the service, they gave you the right to go to college for the months that you were in. That's all. You know, they won't give you 4 years of college unless you were in the service for 4 years, the months. I was in there 35 months, so I went to school that gave the degree, and we went to school all year for 36 months. And at the last month, I had to pay for it because the government wouldn't pay for it. So then I graduated, and that was it. But if it wasn't for the it was a good thing that the war came on, because it brought a lot of the kids up higher in education, because they got educated in the service. When they got out, they also went into the schooling and whatnot, and so they got a lot of good schooling out of it.
Right. Now, after you got out, did you get involved with any veterans organizations or things like that, or just?
Yeah, I was in for a while. I was in the reserve. Just for a couple of years, I think it was, and that was it.
But they didn't call you up for Korea or anything like that?
No.
But did you get involved with the VFW or the Legion or things like that? Or just,
no. Real busy raising the family.
Right. But you did go out to the World War II Memorial, though, much later.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah.
Tell me about that trip.
Oh, that trip was a beautiful trip. Me and my buddy went out there, and they flew us out here from Grand Rapids and landed in Baltimore. And they had a big, we were surprised because in the airport in Baltimore, you had a long hallway down. And all along that hallway on both sides were these people with flags and stuff and yell and all that. Oh, that just blew us away. And so, and then from there, they put us on a bus to drive into Washington. And they let us off, and then they took us, went to the memorials, all the memorials. We were on this bus, and they took us to all the places to go to the memorial, and then they took us around every half hour. So we went to a different place, and we went up to the Arlington Cemetery. We saw John Kennedy's grave, and saw other graves there. And from there, they drove us around to see the different statues that were on the road that they went through, and that was that was very, very interesting. And they gave us lunch at the near the Potomac River. They brought us lunch, and from there, and then we went from there to Baltimore to get the plane. But on the way, we stopped off at a buffet, big buffet. So we ate there and got all filled up. And then in the meantime, before we got on the plane, when we got on the plane, the guy passed out letters. See, before we went, they demanded if you got grandkids or anybody or your wife or what, write a letter and seal it and send it into the head guy, Becker. And so at that time, when we were coming back on the plane, he passed out mail call. So he passed out, and I got, I don't know, 5 or 6 letters, F7 letters, and then you open them up and you read what the kids wrote.
Right.
And they all wrote about, oh, they're so glad that I went on this trip and stuff, and glad to see me go and stuff. Yeah.
There's one more thing I remember it got mentioned here in your written account of your story. Now, did you see like USO shows or have any entertainers come
Yeah,
through?
we had the USO shows came there. Bob Hope came there, Bing Crosby, and we saw them. We went to the shows there that they've.
And where do you remember where you saw them? Was that in Germany?
I can't
after
remember
the
where
war,
that was.
or?
That was after the. That was during the war too.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know where that was at that one spot, Heidelberg or somewhere. I think it was. Yeah.
And I also noticed. I think that one of the bridges you built, they called it the Dinosaur Bridge.
Yeah, dinosaur.
Okay.
Yeah, dinosaur. Yeah.
All right. But I guess they said Dinosaur, like the singer.
Yeah, Dinah Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did she come and perform for you
Yeah,
someplace too?
we saw Dinah Shore. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So that was nice because you helped keep up the morale of the troops, you know.
Yeah. Now, were there any times when you're over there, during the war, where you felt like you were in danger or kind of worried about things?
Oh yeah, a lot of times, because we were shelled many times during the time we was there, like 300. I think I got it in. I think we were shelled at least 300 some days out of the year.
I think what it says is you were within enemy artillery range for 275 days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that was kind of a regular
we were
thing.
always up in the front, because that's where they needed us.
Right.
To pick up the mines and stuff and build the roads and fix the bridges.
Yep.
Yeah, we was always up front. We were never in the back.
And bridge sites would be places where the Germans could have kind of zeroed in their artillery ahead of time or known the location to shoot.
Oh
at.
yeah, they know where we're going to be.
Did your company take many casualties?
Yeah, we took, not many, but most of the casualties that we took is when at the one force, the para force, the platoon come up there and they were going to give instructions what we're supposed to do. And they were all lined up in a circle. And then the captain was walking to the circle, and he must have tripped a wire, a bomb, or something, and it blew up right near the circle, and all those guys got hurt because some guys got the leg off.
They got shrapnel, yeah.
Oh, there was at least 15, I think, 15 or 16 guys got hurt, and they had to take them to the hospitals.
Okay. But the enemy artillery didn't usually actually hit your guys.
No, not that I know of. But we were very close at times. I could hear it, boom, and it was only about maybe 100 yards away or 200 yards away.
Yeah.
So.
And after the early period, did you have much trouble with German aircraft, or did they kind of disappear after a while?
Well, at first, first when we got over there.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, you talked about that.
Yeah, we were on the road, and these planes Messerschmitts came down the road, and we had to jump off. I jumped off in the thing, and so did Manley. He jumped off, and
right. But then
a couple times when we were right by the bridge that they were building, we came up there to see how they're doing, and sure enough, here comes the planes. We had to get out of there in a hurry, and then finally these guys with the 50 millimeter. They were on the Jeep, and they were shooting at him, and that's when one of the guys got hit. Hit one of them.
Right. Yeah. But then later on in the war, though, did the Germans keep attacking, or did the planes go away? No.
Later on in the war, you didn't have too much of that anymore.
Okay. All right. Now, are there other kind of stories or things that kind of stand out in your mind about the time in Europe that you haven't brought up here today yet?
There's other stories. Well, let's see. There's like when we went to, I think, is one in there about Captain Petrini. Okay, they had snipers, two snipers up in a barn, and Captain Petrini said to the two other guys with him, said, "Let's go get them." So, but Captain Petrini, he had a German pistol, and you know those German pistols, they had a weak safety. So so they was going, and all of a sudden he saw that one sniper in the thing. So he reaches his gun and pulls it out and shoots himself in the leg because it had a weak safety, and then they had to take him to the hospital. So, and then he came back. Oh, I don't know how long ago. After that, he came back to the company, and he never mentioned this pistol that he got shot himself with.
Did somebody else get the sniper, or did he get away?
Oh yeah, the other guy. There were two guys with him. I think the other guy got the sniper. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a little things like that happen, you know.
Yeah. There's also now one of the things that went on some of the time, especially as people kind of got into Germany, was people had a habit of picking up souvenirs in various places and taking things with them.
Yeah.
Was your unit doing that kind of thing? And
yeah, I saw a lot of that souvenirs that they picked up, and like these guys would pick up pictures, you know, good pictures. Find them in a home or something like that. They would pick them up, and you know, it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
You know, so I wasn't picking up anything that would get me on. You know, so but the only thing I ever got was an accordion. At that one German place, this guy was playing his accordion, and he had a couple other accordions there, and I talking to him, and that he gave me that accordion. He gave me one. It was a little one.
Yep.
And I brought it home.
Okay.
Yeah. But now I don't have it anymore.
So that's not something they took away from you as
No.
you were shipping home.
No, I was
you could
shipping
keep
home,
the
yeah.
accordion. All right. But as I think was a mention here of Captain Petrini getting into some trouble.
Oh yeah, he got into trouble. He went somewhere in a home or someplace, and he took some valuable pictures, I think, and they called him in on it. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what the story was about that, but I don't think he shipped them at home. But evidently they called him up on it. Yeah. So I think they must have got it back or what.
Yeah. But you could get in trouble for that.
You
kind
could
of
get into trouble, yeah, for looting. They call that looting.
Yeah. All right. Now, did you ever encounter among the Germans or the Austrians, was there anybody who was sort of more hostile toward you or kind of mad at you for being there?
No, not like that. No, they weren't mad. You know, they were really glad that we showed up, really, because they were under stress for quite a long time. So when they saw us coming, only time that they would get mad if one of our soldiers or stuff would be looting or something like that, you know, destroying property or something like that. They would probably get mad at that. But no, we in our radio section, partway through, I think Nancy, France or what, we picked up a German ambulance. It was a 4-cylinder air-cooled engine, an ambulance. So we used that as our command car. We put all our radio stuff in there, and we'd drive that thing for forever. And because we didn't have to worry about antifreeze or anything. It was an air-cooled engine. And we would always drive in the back of the convoy, and on the side we had the last straw.
Now, did they let you keep that German vehicle the whole time?
Yeah,
Okay,
until it finally broke down.
All right.
Yeah, because I don't know where it came from, but we used it because we needed it for all of our equipment.
What had happened to your original command car?
Well, the command car, they still use the command car. The captain and stuff would ride in that.
Okay.
But once we got that thing, then we put all the equipment in there, and then the command car was free to be run. I drove the command car for the captain for a while too. I drove him around. That gave me a job to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that particularly once you were in Austria and didn't have anything else to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I drove the captain around, cut hair.
Right. All right. Well, makes for a good story. So
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank you for coming in and sharing it with us today.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, we had a good time.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.